What's the point of niche fragrances anyway? I'm going to have a bit of a rant today. And this has been on my mind for a while now. And I want to first of all define it, okay? Because I think that a lot of terms get misconstrued every day. It's an occurrence that happens all around the world, in every organization, even in certain conversations that you're having. You're using the same words, but you're having different meanings. So first of all, let's define what it is to be niche. Let's keep it simple and refer to niche as the dictionary definition of something that appeals to a small audience. And of course, to oppose that, we have something that appeals to a large audience. Maybe we should call that mass appealing. Yes, I am a word genius. Now, just because something appeals to a small audience doesn't mean it's bad. Not at all. What it means is that there is a loyal band, a very small band of audience that is very willing to participate in this product or this service. Case in point today, if I'm talking about niche fragrances, there's going to be a small band of people that are very ardent followers of a particular type of niche fragrance. And this band of adamant die-hard lovers of this fragrance will continue to buy it. So it doesn't necessarily mean that something is niche is bad. Not at all. It just means that it appeals to a small audience. Now, currently, if you look anywhere online, if you look at all, or if you listen to all the fragrance reviewers, if you read all of the reviews, everybody refers to niche as the fragrance house or the fragrance company itself. Now, this currently termed niche fragrance house can have multiple fragrances in its catalog, right? Many of them will probably be actual niche, as in appealing to a small audience. But inevitably, there's always one, or at least a few in their pretty vast catalogs, that is going to be mass appealing. How does that work? I mean, they probably need it to be mass appealing in order to keep the revenue coming in that's going to keep this company going. So, you know, they're trying to make the money, which is what we sort of accuse the larger conglomerates of doing. And by larger conglomerates, what I'm talking about is the designer brands that we currently refer to. So there's the niche, there's the designer, right? It is important to get clarity on this topic because everyone who disagrees with me is not correct. So both smaller fragrance houses and the multinational corporations are trying to do the same thing. They're just trying to make some money and generate a profit and probably produce a quality product to the best of their abilities and the best of their intentions. That just boils down to sell heaps of stuff and make it a money. Now, the smaller houses will have probably a catalog of fragrances, many of which are going to be, you know, niche, in fact, appealing to a small audience. Inevitably, though, they're going to have a few or maybe one that is going to be mass appealing, that is going to generate the income that they need to survive. And then you probably see the multinational corporations doing the exact opposite. So the strategies are a little bit different, but I mean, you look at it, it's different means to the same end, right? So they're just trying to generate a profit. That's what companies do. Because the smaller houses will probably sell less in quantity, but at a higher price. Meanwhile, the multinational corporations will sell in the bucket loads and therefore take advantage of the economies of scale that brings and at a lower price point. I'm not going to go into quality because obviously there's going to be a difference there as well, but not always. Not always. Now, based on this analysis, we can come to the conclusion that it's not really a fragrance house or the company that's niche, but it's the fragrance itself. A fragrance house cannot be niche, but a fragrance can? By that logic, Creed's Aventus is mass appealing and therefore not niche. And something like, I don't know, Gucci Guilty Absolute is niche because it's not really mass appealing, is it? This allows a fragrance to be, I guess, judged more appropriately and on its own merits. So it doesn't sort of color our judgment by looking at the fragrance house, but in terms of actually judging a fragrance for what it is, in the context of what it is, it provides a more accurate representation. And very importantly, it also allows an elasticity of definition. Let me explain this one. For example, a fragrance can start off niche, as in appealing to a small audience, at a higher price point, and gain in popularity and become mass appealing. And as it becomes mass appealing, you obviously need to produce more of it so you can take advantage of those economies of scale and the price point drops. And then after a certain amount of time, when the hype has died down or maybe the trend has moved on, then this fragrance can become unniched. I'm copywriting that word, by the way. The fragrance, once it loses popularity, it can then go back to being a fragrance that is only, I guess, bought by a small number of people. So it becomes niche again because it's only appealing to a small audience. And the price point then changes once again. This really allows the companies that are producing these fragrances the elasticity of the price point. So the comfort of elastic pricing models, let's say. And these elastic pricing models suit the fragrance's journey as it goes from niche to mass appeal, back to niche, back to mass appeal maybe, because that's the genuine nature of human beings, is that something that is expensive and is hard to get is highly sought after. And then once you do get it and it's all over the place, it loses value because the supply is much higher and the price point is much less and more people can afford it. I'm not really that interested anymore. And then a lot of people lose interest. And once it loses interest, maybe some people, that's where the saying comes from, where old is new again. It's because people have forgotten about this cool thing that existed back in the day, and again it's quite rare and hard to get, and the price point may be back to being what it was originally when it was originally released. And this price point is invariably tied to the fragrance's production numbers. So I guess that's a win-win, right? Now, let's face some cold hard truths here. I mean, there are conglomerates out there who are truly producing some daring stuff, some very different kind of juices, some very different scents that we've not come across before, knowing full well that they probably won't sell a lot of it. They are taking chances once in a while. And they can probably afford to as well, because they've probably got the money, the resources and everything like that, and they're probably sharing the scent DNA of all of these so-called niche fragrance houses, because a lot of the time these so-called niche brands are owned by the multinational corporations. So they might be sharing scent DNA and they know what the secret is to producing high quality stuff at a lower price point. And on the topic of these larger conglomerates owning these sort of smaller brands, you notice that a lot of them aren't that independent. But then on the other hand, you do have some of the brands that are very, very independent. Most of the time, it's going to be the ones with the no frills bottles and really little to no marketing, and you've never heard of them before. Some of them even have handwritten labels, but the juice inside the bottle is what's important. And the juice inside these bottles is truly remarkable. And for the people that make them, we definitely need them. We definitely need them. They might appeal to a small audience that would be truly niche, but we definitely need them. And not just in fragrances, in pretty much every facet of business, you need the small passionate band of creators, of craftspeople who actually follow a passion, follow a dream, rather than follow a profit motive. But I am generalizing here, so chill. And as I said, we very much need these smaller fragrance houses, if anything, to keep the larger conglomerates on their toes. It's not about making the mass appealing type of scents for them. It's about sending the wearer and their close associates on a journey, using the years and years, usually decades of experience that they have in noses in crafting certain scents to take you on that multifaceted, multi-layered journey that the smaller sort of fragrances that appeal to small audience usually tend to do a lot better than the ones that come from multinational corporations. So kudos to all those people who do that without compromise. But one thing you can't argue with is that most people out there just don't have the level of olfactory sense development to truly appreciate that something is, blended well, or something that uses, or a fragrance that uses natural ingredients over synthetic. Which I find very strange, because most of what you're smelling most of the time is just volatile aroma chemicals. The majority of people could care less about the level of nuance that fragrance geeks preach on a daily basis. This includes the people that actually do have the money to buy something that is beautifully blended and uses very quality or high quality ingredients. They don't even care, because once you have the money, you're going to buy a status symbol, because that's what you do when you have money, right? So, where to from here? Well, fragrances are either made to be niche or mass appealing. Not the fragrance house, but the fragrance itself. Fragrances can be both niche and mass appealing at different points in the fragrance's life cycle. Fragrances should be judged on their own merit to avoid us from judging them based on our, predetermined prejudices, I guess. And just because a small number of us geek out over the nuances in fragrances doesn't mean that the majority of people are going to do that also. Which doesn't mean that we're better than them, even though we probably are. But really, how easy is it to actually judge something based on its own merit, or judge an act based on the context in which it was enacted? From what I've seen so far, it's quite difficult for humans to do. It's because we don't fully understand perspective. And that's probably why we'll never get an honest review of anything. And it's probably the reason why we lie to ourselves more than we care to admit. In the end, coming to this realization is revealing that whatever your view, perspective matters a great deal. Understanding perspective is akin to being a god. However, like a god, understanding perspective exists in thought alone, constructed by the idiosyncratic stereotypes we've collected over time. Which means that one needs to understand, for those who aren't heavily involved in the nuances of that something, it's quite simple. There is no niche or designer. There is no blended well or blended poorly. There is no synthetic versus natural. It just either smells good or it doesn't.